because this whole book is also about the importance of narrative for humans, especially for the Homo sapiens, and why our species thrive. Can you explain that?
Yeah, humans are storytelling animals. We control the world because of our ability to tell stories. Why are stories so important?
Yeah.
Because this is what connects us together. On an individual level, a human is not more powerful than a chimpanzee or an elephant or a lion. What really makes us powerful is that 1 million people can cooperate on a big project. 1 million chimpanzees can't. What makes it possible for us to cooperate? It's not personal acquaintance. I know maybe 100 people, maybe 500 people top. If you count all my family and friends of friends, like, I don't know you personally. Nevertheless, we are now together creating this TV show. What makes it possible for humans to cooperate with strangers, with large numbers of strangers? Stories. It could be religious stories about some god. It could be national stories, our national mythology. It could be economic stories, like money. You know, even money is just a story. Money has no objective value if you think about $1 or a Bitcoin. You can't eat Bitcoins. You can't drink Bitcoins. Their value comes from the stories people tell about them. We just saw how the election of Trump to US president led to a huge jump in the value of Bitcoin. It's now like $70,000 or $80,000 for one Bitcoin. Why? Why should the election of Trump lead to a rise in the value of Bitcoin? Because of the story. That you see that people constantly tell stories in order to convince other people that this thing has value. And it works. This is the basis for all our economic system. The stories that we tell about currencies, about the stock exchange, about companies, and every company that wants to raise money to gain investments, it tells a story. Like people in the investment world, they know that ultimately to have investors, you need to tell a successful story. It's not enough that you have good engineers or you have good technology. And now for the first time in history, there is something that can tell a story and is not a human being.
Exactly.
Again, every previous technology, a printing press could not tell stories. A television set cannot tell stories. A television set can broadcast the stories that we invent. But no story was ever invented by a television. AI is already inventing new stories. It might one day invent new currencies, much more complex than Bitcoin. It might even invent entire new political ideologies, entire new religions.
Just an example of the power of stories. Also in this book, you say that, for example, Bialik's poems can be in the center of the beginning of this conflict between Israelis and Palestinians.
Yeah.
Well, it's a kind of amazing as how a story, how what we write can motivate something like this.
Yeah, every nation starts with stories. It's not a land. It's not even, something in our DNA. It's not the DNA that decides whether you belong to Portugal or Spain or to Israel or to Iran. It's the stories in your mind. It's the stories you believe about the past, about God, about whatever. So to create a nation, like to create a religion, people tell stories. It's not just texts, it's also images. If you think, what is the most famous face in the world? What is the most common portrait in history? So it's the portrait of Jesus. Over 2,000 years, billions and billions of images and portraits of Jesus were created, and they are everywhere, in churches, cathedrals, private houses, hospitals, many places. Now, the amazing thing about all these portraits is that they are all fictional. We do not have even a single authentic portrait of Jesus. No portrait has survived from his own lifetime, and the Bible doesn't even tell us how he looked like. Like, if you read the Bible carefully, there is not a single word in the Bible whether Jesus was tall or short,
Exactly.
whether he was thin or fat, whether he had black hair or blonde hair, or maybe he was bald. Nothing. All the billions of portraits of Jesus, they are just fictional images that humans imagined centuries, thousands of years after he lived. And yet they were extremely effective in creating connections between people, in inspiring people. Could be inspiring people to do good things, like give charity and build hospitals and so forth. Could be bad things, like go on crusades or start the Inquisition and torture and kill people because they don't believe in the right story. But this is the power of stories.
Well, it looks like you are talking, for example, about social media.
Yeah.
What you said right now, we can apply to social media. And how would we prevent that something like what happened to the Rohingya people in Bangladesh? How would we, in Myanmar? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How would we prevent this kind of events right now? Because the Rohingya massacre was motivated by Facebook.
By propaganda and
In
fake news
Facebook.
that spread on Facebook, yes. What we need to understand is that information is not truth. And simply creating more effective ways to spread information doesn't mean that we will get more truth. Because the truth is actually a very small subset of all the information in the world. The truth has several problems. The truth is costly. It takes time, money, effort to produce a truthful account of history or biology or anything. Fiction is very cheap. You just write anything you want. To create fake news or a conspiracy theory, very cheap. The truth tends to be complicated because reality is complicated. Fiction can be made as simple as you would like it to be. And the truth, finally, is often painful. There are things we don't want to know about ourselves, about our nation, about the world. Fiction can be made as flattering and pleasant as you would like it to be. So in a competition between the costly and complicated and painful truth and the cheap and simple and flattering fiction, fiction tends to win, unless we make the effort to build institutions that give preference to the truth, like in science. Now, in social media, we don't have it. In old media, like over the centuries, newspapers and radio stations and television, they developed mechanisms to fact check and to make sure that, to the best of their ability, they are not spreading fake news and conspiracy theories. But social media lacks these mechanisms so far, partly because the companies refuse to take responsibility. They say, no,
and we are talking about private companies.
Yes,
It's
private company. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, they are now the most important information platforms in the world. And they have this kind of very ingenious argument. We believe in free speech. We don't want to prevent any kind of information from being spread. Now, this is, of course, a trick, because the problem is not the free speech of humans. The problem is the decisions of algorithms. Every day, humans produce enormous amounts of content on social media. Funny cat videos, and biology lessons, and conspiracy theories, all kinds of things. I don't think that companies should censor what humans produce. That's not the problem. The problem is that the algorithms of the companies, then from all the content that humans produce, they deliberately spread content which causes hatred and fear and greed. Why? Because this is good for their business. The main goal of the platforms and of the algorithms is to make people spend more time on the platform. The more time you spend on the platform, the more money they make. Now, how do you make people spend more time on the platform? The algorithms, the AIs that manage the platforms, they experimented on millions, on billions of human beings, and they discovered that the easiest way to grab your attention, to keep you on the platform, is to press the hate button, or the fear button, or the greed button in your mind. Because we are programmed by evolution to focus attention on dangers, for instance. Like if you walk in the African savannah 100,000 years ago, and you see a tree, and you see a bush, and you see a stone, and there is a snake, you're programmed, all attention on the snake. Because if you miss the snake and you just look at the clouds, you're dead. So we are programmed, if something is a big danger, all attention is there. We cannot look away. Now, in the African savannah, you don't see a snake every moment. Maybe once in a week or in a month you see a snake. If you now open social media, it's snake, 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 snake. Because they discovered that to grab our attention, if they show us something that scares us, that makes us angry, we cannot take our eyes off it. And they deliberately, again, from all the contents that humans create, the algorithms discover, oh, this will make people angry. Good, we'll put it at the top of the newsfeed. And as a result, our media platforms, our information sphere, is being filled with hate and greed and fear, and this is destructive to our mental health, and this is destructive to society. We see it in democracies all over the world, that the conversation is breaking down. You know, in United States, Republicans and Democrats are barely able to hold a rational conversation anymore, or to agree on the most basic facts, because of this flood of fake news and conspiracy theories. So we have the most sophisticated information technology in history, and people are losing the ability to hold a conversation.